In the universe, all galaxies are releasing out extreme amounts of energy spherically. The summing of the interacting kinetic energy release out of the galaxies is creating space currents that are binding in from all sides to a path of less resistance in the space between the galaxies. The space currents are forming interacting energy compression fields in which the pre-galactic black holes start to form from the interaction of the binding compressing space currents created by the outgoing kinetic interacting energy release in the universe. The space between the galaxies is astronomically big. The force of the interacting energies between the galaxies is weak. Central pre-galactic black holes start to grow from the smallest energy particles interacting in the space currents created by the energy release interactions from the surrounding galaxies. The energy sums of the external space currents are giving the kinetic properties like the trajectory of movement and the spin of the central pre-galactic black holes in forming. Billions of years may be needed for an energy mass and kinetic properties like the properties of a central galactic black hole to accumulate. As a reaction from the kinetic summing of the energy release from the surrounding galaxies towards a created central pre-galactic black hole, a reactional repelling kinetic energy force is created from the central pre-galactic black hole. The kinetic energy dynamics of the repelling force from the black hole in interaction with the pressing energy summing of the external space currents created from the energy release of the surrounding galaxies are super-densening the space around a central pre-galactic black hole in forming. The interacting energies are creating a galactic vortex that is trans-dragging the entire pre-galactic space density around the spinning central black hole. The weaker space currents, pressed away from the central pre-galactic black hole in interaction with the opposing space currents towards the black hole, are summing to a flow of less resistance in energy-accumulating compression fields around the black holes, where stars are born in the created energy vortex pockets after millions of years of energy mass accumulations and fusions made by the compressing currents. Planetary solar systems are also formed in a same way from the summing of the external kinetic space currents interacting with the repelling kinetic energy dynamics from the stars in forming, altogether creating energy vortexes around the stars where energy accumulates, where over time, planets, moons, and other space materializations are formed from the compressing kinetic energy interactions of the external space currents, created by the summing of the interacting energy release in the universe. A forming of a star from the first starting energies is similar to a forming of a central galactic black hole from the first starting energies, and can be mathematically and physically emulated correctly. If we emulate a galactic environment with 8 stars born at the same time in an energy equilibrium created from the surrounding stars and energy-emitting celestial bodies, and if the 8 stars are positioned symmetrically as if the same stars were placed on the edges of an astronomically big geometrical cube, and if all the 8 stars spherically give out energy equally, then the interacting energies and particles from the outgoing spherical energy release from the stars will create a strongest energy interaction compression field in the center between the 8 stars, where the energy particle interactions are enriching and compressing the central energy interaction space between the stars. In the center between the 8 stars, a mathematical energy compression field is formed that accumulates and repels energy. On the level of the interacting particles and energies that are compressing the created central energy field between the stars, the energy release from the surrounding stars is the gravitational force towards the created central energy field between the stars. If we randomly add an external, non-geometrically related night-smaller star to the previous example, the outgoing spherical kinetic energy release from the 9th star will give moving kinetic properties and a spin to the now diminishing central subphotonic energy field created by the first 8 stars. Mathematically and physically, the repelling kinetic force of the spin of the central energy field has a highest repelling force momentum along the equatorial line of the spinning energy field, while the polar sides of the spinning energy field have less repelling force resistance towards the external compressing energies. The external compressing energies pressing towards the polar sides of the spinning energy field are summing in force, and the stronger external polar force being on a path of less resistance presses out the weaker one from the other side. The stronger polar force entering one pole of the spinning energy field and exiting the other is swelled back by the repelling energy dynamics of the energy field in interaction with the opposing gravitational forces towards the entering pole of the spinning energy field. As a result, from the interacting energies, a kinetic energy current flow is formed around the spinning energy field, a magnetic field. Mathematically and physically, the repelling kinetic energy dynamics of the spinning energy field, in interaction with the external compressing energies, are now contributing to a superseding of new subphotonic energy field formations in the central variable dynamic energy equilibrium created from the energy interactions of the energy release from the surrounding stars. The energy-sustaining feed from the energy release interactions of the surrounding stars, pressing in from all sides towards the created central energy fields between the stars, is the gravitational force flow towards the created energy fields, and the reactional opposing force radiating from the created energy fields between the stars is the anti-gravitational force to the gravitational feed towards the created central energy fields between the stars. The binding energy dynamics of the created energy fields between the stars are creating pre-atomic and pre-molecular energy formations. The atoms, the atomic and molecular formations, are formed from the binding kinetic energy dynamics of the subatomic energies in interaction with the external energy environment. In the universe, all spatial atomic structurings are made from the interacting energy dynamics of the atoms and the gravitational energy flow towards the atoms, pressing the atoms one towards another in one with the reactional anti-gravitational refined repelling force flow radiating spherically out of the atoms, pressing the atoms spherically away from one another. The energy interaction between the radiating force out of the atoms and the gravitational flow towards the atoms is creating extreme amounts of energy refinements that are densening the space around the atoms under the pressure of the gravitational feed, creating what we perceive as atomic materializations, being only energies in motion. For an observer observing from far away, the forming of the central energy fields between the stars that accumulate and repel energy on photonic levels would be physically seen as an expanding dark energy formation that bends the light between the stars because the photonic kinetic energy intensity of the created central energy fields between the stars is not yet strong enough to penetrate the compressing energy force release from the stars. By emulating the 9-star example, only this time instead of the 9 stars, if we are observing a summing of energy release dynamics in the universe that are forming variable subspatial dynamic energy equilibrium, where the summing of the external energy release is forming a stellar nebula, we will mathematically and physically see the same kinetic energy summing processes repeating again, and we will see how a protostar is created and how a star is born from the kinetic energy accumulations and the fusions made by the external compressing energies onto the protostar. In the universe, the summing of the radiating energies in and out of the galaxies are also creating and enriching the dark matter and the dark energy in the universe. The dark energy between the galaxies is a kinetic energy flow summing in pressure fields of looping energies that form the dark matter densities between the galaxies, where over billions of years of kinetic energy mass accumulations, new galaxies are created when the dark matter energies are kinetically merging together. In the universe, all atomic energy formations and energy bindings are formed and fed from all the affecting energy release interactions and the resulting energy interaction dynamics to a flow of less resistance, altogether forming a variable dynamic energy equilibrium across the universe, the fabric of space, and everything in the universe. Everything in the universe is made from energy. All energy bindings and materializations in the universe are formed and fed from the kinetic energy release interactions in the universe. All physical and chemical laws in the universe come from only one law. Energy always flows to a path of less resistance. There are more than 100 billion stars only in the Milky Way galaxy, surrounded by billions of galaxies, altogether releasing out energy spherically in the universe. The dynamic energy release interactions in the universe are creating the fluctuating quantum field in the universe and the space texture where energy always flows to a path of less resistance. Stars from the first energies are formed from the kinetic energy summing of the interacting galactic space currents pressing towards a space of less resistance in the galaxies. The summing of the galactic kinetic space currents flowing in from all sides towards binding points of less resistance in space are creating the pre-star energy compression fields, where as a result of the interacting energy summing of the external compressing space currents, energy vortex pockets start to form around the protostars in forming. Stars are born in the created vortex pockets after millions of years of kinetic energy mass accumulations from the kinetic energy interactions and the fusions created by the external compressing space currents pressing onto the protostar. Forming of planetary solar systems. While a star is forming by the interacting energy release in a galaxy, the created kinetic energy dynamics of the star in forming are also repelling sums of the lighter external space currents around the star, and the repelled external space currents are summing to a flow of less resistance in the dynamic energy interaction field around the star, where energy mass is accumulated and compressed in binding points in the vortex pockets created by the summing of the kinetic energies of the affecting space currents toward a space of less resistance. After millions of years of kinetic energy mass accumulations and energy compressions causing fusions, planetary cores are formed in the spinning vortex pockets around the stars, with kinetic properties given by the external affecting space currents. Moons around planets form like the planets around the stars. From the summing of the dispersed lighter space currents repelled by the planets in forming, secondary energy interaction fields that accumulate energies are forming near the planets. The space currents near the planets in forming are summing to a flow of less resistance in binding points, interacting energy compression fields in the spinning vortex pockets near the planets, where over time the celestial cores of the moons are formed from the interacting compressing energy currents with kinetic properties given by the affecting forces. Once the Earth's core was formed in space, the radiating energy release from the Earth's core was in a strong naked interaction with the gravitational feed flow towards the core. All radiating energies from the Earth's core with less force than the gravitational force flow towards the core were ellipsing back towards the core. The flaming surface of the core was getting denser and denser from the ellipsing particles and the looping energies trapped between the force interactions. After millions of years of energy repetitions from the compressing forces, surface crust was starting to form on Earth. The crust was breaking by the pressures created in the core. Lava was continuously erupting and cooling on the surface, forming new layers upon layers of solid surface. The repetitive force interactions between the core, the Earth's surface, and the space above were refining the atmospheric viscosities. We know space is extremely cold, and we know the Earth's core is extremely hot. What happens on a surface when hot and cold energies interact is atmospheric gas formations and condensation. Water is forming. Water surfaces were forming everywhere on Earth, and there were constant rains. Earth was a water world at one point in time. Breathable atmosphere was also formed from the ongoing atmospheric energy interaction dynamics. Water life was formed first. Vegetation and life on the surface were also formed with time, and here we are billions years later, living in paradise. Looking at an entire solar system, the energy interaction field created from the interactions between the external space currents, the gravitational flow towards the star, and the radiating energy release from the star is densest near the star and less dense away from the star. So, the further away from the star, the space currents forming the planets and the moons are, the lighter the elements will be. All the other space materializations in a solar system are also formed and fed from the binding of the kinetic energy release interactions that are affecting the solar systems in the galaxies. The gravitational force toward the created space materializations is the same binding energy force that is compressing energy to a path of less resistance and is forming the space materializations. The stronger the gravitational force is, the bigger the mass will be. We already know the bigger the mass of a celestial body is, the bigger the gravity towards the same body is. But fire doesn't have mass if we exclude the mass of the gases, and yet a fire excites a gravitational flow towards the fire. If a dust particle was attached to an oxygen molecule near a burning candle, the dust particle would be taken toward the fire on the current flow feeding the fire. So why does a fire create a gravitational feed flow? A fire refines energy, a fire transforms energy from one form into another. A fire radiates energy, and a fire excites a current flow feeding the fire. The fire does the same in space. To understand gravity, imagine the texture of space is made from sand grains, subatomic energy fields, and imagine a fire in space is like a sand grain vaporizer, vaporizing every individual sand grain. The fire is bursting and radiating the diminished vaporized energy between the sand grains, while new sand grains are flowing towards the fire pressed by the summing of the energy release interactions in the entire universe. The fire excites a gravitational force, an energy current towards the created space of less resistance on the levels of the diminished energies by the fire in the subspatial dynamic energy equilibrium created by the summing of the energy release interactions in the entire universe. A star does the same in space. A star also excites a gravitational force, a current flow of the subtexture of space pressed by the energy release interactions in the universe and the resulting compressing forces towards a space of less resistance. We know now what gravity is. Gravity is a force created by the summing of the energy release interactions in the entire universe. A gravitational force is a binding energy flow that is pressing and compressing energy towards a space of less resistance. Newton thought of gravity when an apple has fallen from a tree on the ground. If an apple was to fall on a current flow of a river, the current flow of the river would take the apple on the river current. The gravitational force making the apple fall from the tree is in a way similar to the force of the river current. If there was a stone net barrier in a small part of the river, and if the fallen apple was to get in the barrier, the current flow of the river would press the apple to the stone barrier, just like all matter is on the surface of Earth in interaction with the subspatial gravitational force flowing towards the Earth's core. We can prove gravity as a flow of force towards a space of less resistance with a simple example. When a hair comb is frictionalized, the friction may diminish energies in the hair comb material and create a space of less resistance in the environment. On the levels of the diminishing energies in the hair comb material, the gravitational flow formed from the surrounding environment towards the created space of less resistance can bend a weak water flow toward the comb, and if the same gravitational flow from the external environment towards the hair comb is blocked with a coated iron plate, the water flow will stop bending or will bend less, proving the gravitational force is a subspatial energy flow towards a space of less resistance, tending to maintain a subspatial dynamic energy equilibrium. We can get a feel of the dynamic energy equilibrium from the environmental static noise, the so-called white noise, pressing in on a measuring device, an analog antenna from all sides with all the energy frequencies dynamically at the same time. The sub-environmental space created by the energy release in the entire universe is always tending to maintain a spatial energy equilibrium at any floating point in space affected by the external acting forces in the environment. In the same variable dynamic energy equilibrium, when a space of less resistance is created, a gravitational force is formed towards the created space of less resistance. We can see the same happening with the cosmic microwave background radiation pressing in on sensitive radio telescopes in the same way, from all sides uniformly, from everywhere in the universe. Space-time. Life and reality are, and always will be, in the same moment everywhere in the universe. However, after an atomic clock experiment has shown that the measured time with an atomic clock on an airplane in the air runs at a different speed than the measured time with an identical atomic clock on the surface, scientists have approved Einstein's theory of special relativity that gives the moment in time a variable property. In reality, an atomic clock is a physical device that measures time, and just like any physical device, the atomic clock is affected by the physical forces in the environment on all atomic and subatomic levels. Even if an atomic clock is actively compensating to keep the atomic pendulum at a constant rate, in different subatomic densities, the electric signal energy flow in the atomic clock will be affected differently on all atomic and subatomic levels. The speed interval between the atoms for any energy flow varies in ratios to the subatomic densities in the environment and the affecting forces on subatomic levels. The bigger the gravitational forces are, the higher the subatomic density will be. An atomic clock will count time slower in higher subatomic densities and faster in lower subatomic densities. The same happens when a moving and a stationary atomic clocks measure time. The friction created by the movement adds greater density resistance on subatomic levels to the moving atomic clock. If two planes fly at the same altitude, but in opposite directions around the equator, where the subatomic kinetic atmospheric density flows west to east, the internal subatomic environment inside the airplane opposing the atmospheric flow will be denser because of the frictional density enrichments enriching the internal subatomic environment, and the atomic clock in the same airplane will measure time slower. Even if the electric signal flow in our bodies is affected in the same way, the truth is, a human in a non-native density environment will only have greater difficulty functioning on optimal levels, or to be alive at all, while the moment is same everywhere in the universe. Not as Einstein has theorized with the twin paradox, making the moment in time flexible to justify a misperception coming from a Michelson-Morley experiment that disqualifies the ether, the medium through which light travels, that is not accounting for the local subspatial energy equilibrium that protects the light from outside interferences locally. A century ago, after the Michelson-Morley experiment, scientists have given light an ultimate fixed speed, and Einstein has come to a misperception and a conclusion that the moment in time is stretching because he thought that the speed of light has an unchangeable ultimate property. So if light has unchangeable constant speed, then the accelerations, decelerations, and the bending of light in natural theoretical geometric equations that are reflecting the stretching of the fabric of space can only work if the moment in time is flexible. All Einstein needed to do was to prove that during a solar eclipse, the starlight from the stars behind the sun will bend as a result of the energy mass of the sun, and his twin paradox that makes the moment in time flexible would be correct. Einstein has even stated that time is an illusion. A solar eclipse picture was made, the starlight did bend, and Einstein's theory of special relativity was generally accepted, because scientists at the time also thought that light has an ultimate property and a fixed speed. In real life, the spatial density levels in interaction with the gravitational forces are bending the light, not a stretching of the moment of any kind. If we gently put water on a thick sugar floor in a glass box, and after a day when the sugar is absorbed in the water, if we were to activate a laser light through the glass box, the laser light will bend due to the gravitational pull created by the density enrichments in the water. The laser light in the sugar water is pulled by the gravitational flow towards the density enrichments in the sugar water on the gravitational flow toward Earth. This doesn't mean that the moment is stretching for the light or that the light has a fixed speed in any way. The light speed intervals between the atoms varies in ratios to the subatomic densities. The speed of light in denser environments is slower than the speed of light in less dense environments. The speed of light in water is slower than the speed of light in the air. The speed of light in the air is slower than the speed of light in the space above. The speed of light in space, in our solar system, is slower than the speed of light in a solar system with lower refraction index. The speed of light in a human-made vacuum chamber may also vary. As gases are pumped out of the vacuum chamber, the speed of light gets faster and faster. But counterintuitively to the not well thought through expectations that the more gases are pumped out of the vacuum chamber, the faster the light speed will be. After achieving maximum speed in an active, extremely low-pressure vacuum chamber, the speed of light may even start to slow down as more gases are pumped out of the vacuum chamber. because as easy as light passes through an atomic structuring of a solid material like a glass surface, the external subatomic space flows to a path of less resistance through the atomic structurings of the material from which the vacuum chamber is made, and a new internal subatomic spatial densening may be created inside the vacuum chamber that may even lower the speed of light inside the vacuum chamber. Similarly, in space, the reactional energy dynamics of the smallest subatomic energies summing in from all sides towards a space of less resistance are creating the exterior space of the dark matter densities that are pressing the light away, and they cannot be penetrated by the visible light. Light on quantum levels also flows to a path of less resistance. For the light in an observed quantum environment, even our eyes are a path of less resistance, and if we close our eyes, the quantum energy dynamics in the environment will change. What awaits the future generations on Earth is even more precise GPS satellite and clock synchronizations. We can correctly say the speed of light is a speed of an energy flow going from point A to point B, and the same speed in everyday life can be slower or faster depending on the energy source in interaction with the environment. The interacting energy release from the stars, the planets, and all the celestial bodies in the universe that are radiating energy is continuously enriching and expanding the texture of space through which light travels in the universe. The higher the density levels are in space, the longer it takes for the energy-giving light to penetrate the space densities. If an observer on Earth is measuring a distance between the galaxies by using the empirical constant of the speed of light, an illusion is created that the galaxies are speeding away from us and each other. The further away the galaxies are, the faster they will seem to move away with an accelerating constant ratio, and speeds faster than the empirical constant of the speed of light. Funny to say, the observer may even think that the Earth is the center of some kind of a Big Bang, and the center of the universe. The observer observes red shifting, an increase in the wavelengths of light, and a weakening of the highlight frequencies because they get dispersed and absorbed by the space texture in ratios to the space enrichments created by the energy release in the universe. Also, in another physical example, if the ongoing expansion of the space texture, or if the energy release out of the galaxies is pushing the outer edge galaxies towards outer space of less resistance, and if the expanding forces are exceeding the opposing gravitational force, an acceleration of the speed of the outer galaxies will occur. If one might think that our technical capabilities to see a most distant visible galaxy in the universe is the edge of the universe, one must know that for a most distant galaxy to be formed and gravitationally sustained, there has to be an extreme force on galactic scales pressing from outside the visible universe towards the same distant galaxy. Heartbeat. A planetary core can create clockwork-like micro and macro energy pulsing dynamics that are penetrating the planetary surface. We can hear the rhythmic pulsing energy dynamics of the Earth's core when we sound probe the Earth's surface. There is one pulsation, big enough to be seismically noticeable, happening every 26 seconds on Earth, created by the energy release of the Earth's core in interaction with the gravitational flow towards the core, like when an iron plate is on top of a bowl of boiling water and the iron plate is pulsing from the steam pressure buildup release. If we were to observe a point on Earth where the expanding pulsing energy waves from the Earth's core are penetrating the Earth's surface, every time the energy waves go through the observed point, as the intensity of the expanding pulsing waves weakens, the waves are overflowed by the gravitational flow towards Earth, and so on and on in repetitions, creating a pulsating energy flow environment at the observed point. A microorganism physically starts to form as a biological wonder from the energy summing in the dynamic environmental energy equilibrium created and affected by the energy release interactions in the entire universe. The Earth's core space pulsations and all the sub-environmental forces are environmental part of the growing microscopic life that adopts the affecting forces and pulsations transfluently as an internal and external environment of growth. sums of the external pulsating energy waves pulled by the gravitational feed towards the microorganisms are summing in ellipsing looping circles affected by the external pulsations, aiding a summing of micro-heartbeat dynamics in the growing microscopic bodies. The place where the looping energies accumulate and stand relatively still between the external pulse waves is the place where the heart starts to form on microscopic energy levels in the microorganisms who develop a heart and a cardiovascular system. With time, the accumulated kinetic energy circulations in the growing bodies are overpowering the external pulsing force, and an independent micro-life universe is created governed by the will and the energy dynamics of the microscopic life. The circulating energy in the bodies creates a gravitational pull interacting with the environment. By doing so, a densening and liquefying of the circulating kinetic energy happens from which the cardiovascular systems are starting to form in the microscopic bodies. The pulsating energy dynamics between the Earth's core and the universe are adopted part of the internal mechanics of the bodies. If one can only understand the deepness of the energy dynamics in a body, the functionality, rationality, and the complexity of the bodies, one might say there is a brilliant creator because a microorganism doesn't know how to build a body from atoms, nor do humans. The beginning of life. How can something or someone come out of nothing? If there was a creator, then who created the creator? Or how can even the creator of the creator come out of nothing, out of absolute non-existence? If there was even a smallest microparticle of life from which all life came to be, then how can the same have happened out of the absolute non-existence and given birth to the entire reality? Life is the greatest mystery we are so happy to have happened, and for one to understand the beginning of life and the universe, one can only trace back life and the universe to the beginning. No physicist in the world can correctly explain the appearance of energy and matter out of the nothingness before the beginning of the universe, because matter and energy appearing out of nothing is physically impossible, and yet there is energy and matter everywhere in our reality. To combine the material reality and the physical laws saying matter or energy cannot appear from nothing, we have to seek a deeper core of understanding life, reality, the universe, and the perceivable energies. Everything is made from energy, but if energy cannot appear out of nothing, and yet the universe is made from energy, then a simple, correct definition of the perceivable energy is, a perceivable energy is what is affecting our being. Our being is life. A life is a soul, we say. We see life blossoming everywhere on Earth. Energy and matter are what we perceive being alive. To trace back the beginning of life, the universe, and the perceivable affecting energies, we have to first understand how perceivable affecting energies are created. Perceivable affecting energy can be created easily. When someone is making an action, a perceivable energy is created, and everyone around may be affected by the energy. So we know a life, a soul, can willingly create affecting energy, but a rock cannot do the same. We cannot exclude a soul from life. A physicist cannot say a rock or a Big Bang has magically or physically appeared out of the nothingness and has started the physical reality, because the same is physically impossible. But a physicist can correctly say a life can appear out of the nothingness, because we all come from the nothingness. We know what is starting the reality for everyone alive is life. Life is a blooming property of reality. In the universe, life is the only occurrence coming out from the nothingness, and only a life can create an intentional or non-predictable energy behavior. Everything else is physics. In physics, only a life can create a starting action. Everything else is started actions, reactions, and summing of the energy interactions to a path of less resistance. By adding what is missing in physics, the very property of life as a root expanding energy, then the physical forming of the entire universe from the first starting energies unfolds physically correct, like 1 + 1 = 2. To unfold the beginning of the universe from the first starting energies, let's simplify the entire physics and chemistry to the core. every single physical and chemical law is created from a kinetic energy flow towards a space of less resistance. What causes a kinetic energy flow is the summing of the kinetic force flow created by actions and reactions, and what causes a space of less resistance is a lack of force in space to oppose the force towards the space of less resistance. If we were to reverse all the physical actions to the beginning of the universe, we will see the start of the pre-material universe being a dynamic, expanding energy equilibrium, creating perceivable, non-predictable, chaotic energy behaviors where there is only one law: energy always flows to a path of less resistance. Just by observing the energy interaction dynamics within the oldest relic associated with the early pre-material universe, the cosmic static noise, as was the chaotic state of the early pre-material universe, and with only one physical law, energy always flows to a path of less resistance, we can easily unfold the physical beginning of the material universe and see how in the vastness of space and the chaos of energy interactions, energies were summing to a path of less resistance everywhere in space, creating space currents binding in from all sides towards points of less resistance. The binding space currents were forming interacting energy compression fields with kinetic properties given by the affecting forces. A superseding and grouping of subatomic energy fields was blooming everywhere in the early universe. The overall energy summing was forming general kinetic space currents throughout the vastness of the entire early universe. The general kinetic space currents were summing to a flow of less resistance in pre-galactic energy interaction compression fields, where the first central galactic black holes, stars, and planetary solar systems were starting to form from the summing of the interacting energies, creating the entire material universe. Looking even further away after the outer edge galaxies in the material universe, there is an energy field around the universe on the level of the interacting energies created by the outgoing expanding energy released from the material universe in interaction with the expanding exterior exospace energies pressing towards the material universe. In the energy field around the material universe, the interacting energies are summing to a flow of less resistance. By doing so, creating kinetic energy currents, summing in pressure fields of less resistance, where the new, most distant galaxies will be born at the edges of the material universe. We know now how the universe was created from the first starting energies. We know now the universe is an infinite birth field of galaxies. Everything said in the video comes from the I Love You Baby book by Ka Veaviva. The book is a real-life love story leading to the newest, biggest scientific discoveries, the holy grail of science and knowledge since the dawn of humanity on planet Earth. The scientific discoveries were validated, approved, and internationally published by the European University in 2022. Everyone loves the book because everyone finds the book greater than any great expectations. Written by a medical graduate, No Slaveries on Earth hero, an honored Goodwill ambassador by UNICEF, the book is a real-life love adventure leading to a spiritual teacher who aids in ending all slaveries on planet Earth. The spiritual teacher speaks about the long-forgotten history of the ancient human ancestors, about their dreamfulness reaching across the stars, and about their knowledge. If you like to know the physics behind an ancient belief for achieving a physical light-speed jump in space, most likely possible to be achieved in the future, you will love to hear everything following. The spiritual teacher also warns about possible cataclysmic dangers that are not to be underestimated. We see shooting stars flying in the night sky all the time, and we know celestial collisions are also happening in space all the time. Just a matter of time maybe for a large asteroid to hit Earth. Geologists have found evidence that Earth has been through a cataclysmic event in the past, and scientists have concurred the same by saying that an asteroid hit has destroyed almost all life on the surface of the planet more than 60 million years ago, in the time of the dinosaurs. The scientists were not able to justify the total destructive force of the asteroid without adding extreme kinetic properties to the asteroid. The scientists have missed taking into account that the asteroid hit has triggered an underground chain reaction of exploding gas pockets and seas of oil under the Earth's surface, bursting in flames with extreme force and clothing the atmosphere, killing almost all life on the surface of the planet. The following might sound overwhelming to people like me, says Ka Veaviva, whom I am paraphrasing in the video, people who are kindest human beings, people who are not religious and do not believe in anything supernatural or surreal. But you will love to hear the entire story from the spiritual teacher Nama about the ancient Mayan apocalyptic warning and the ancestors of the ancient Egyptians. By telling a story about the ancient Mayas, the spiritual teacher Nama has maybe given a real-life proof of an extreme, epic ancient prophecy fulfilled before our eyes in the 21st century. Nama says 5,000 years ago, oracles were sent by God to warn the Mayas about a danger of an eschatological end of the world, and the oracles have made a countdown calendar, the Mayan calendar. The Mayan calendar exists even today, warning that an eschatological end of the world may happen on December 21st, 2012, being 56 days later on February 15th, 2013, if compensated for the excess time from the Earth's rotation around the Sun and the micro-deceleration of a celestial threat towards Earth in over 5,000 years' time. As was warned in the Mayan calendar, with high precision for a timescale of over 5 millenniums, on February 15, 2013, a meteor breaking into the Earth's atmosphere has hit Russia, while on the same day the real threat, a 130,000-ton asteroid has barely missed Earth, flying through on an altitude beneath the Earth's orbital satellites, as is recorded by NASA. Nama says the Mayan calendar was correctly warning about a possible threat, and if the undersurface oil and gas were not depleted, the asteroid hit could have triggered underground chain reactions of over 60 million years old seas of oil and gas bursting in flames, killing all life on the surface of the planet. Even I said, maybe there is a higher power looking over Earth. Nama says there is. It is God. The spiritual teacher Nama says there were people throughout history, like Christ, Muhammad, and other dear souls, to whom God has revealed presence and has given guidance. The families of some of the people with a millenniums-old root connected to God have grown into hidden guardian groups, a united brotherhood, protectors of Earth, and they have known of an eschatological asteroid threat towards Earth, and that the asteroid hit can trigger an underground chain reaction that can destroy all life on the surface of the planet, and they have acted to make planetary defense preparations to prevent a cataclysmic disaster from happening, including the start of the oil depletion on Earth as a precaution against a cataclysmic asteroid threat. Like all who are oversensitive on these subjects, I always avoid any surreal topics, nor I want to convey anything similar to anyone, says Ka Veaviva, whom I am paraphrasing in the video. I am not religious, but religious or not, everyone will love to hear what Nama said about the ancient human ancestors because the same gives answers to something we all love to know, and something for the first time may be giving a correct answer to the question. Why is there a pyramid with an ascending pyramid top and "In God We Trust" written on the $1 bill? The answer is greater than anyone's fantasy. The spiritual teacher Nama said the biblical God comes from human-made stories, but God is real. Nama says the origins of God come from a time when God, a most beautiful, immortal, infinite being, was a friend with the early human ancestors who were the kindest living beings on Earth millenniums ago. The first given name to God by the ancient human ancestors was Ai. When the night sky was clear, Ai was teaching the ancient human ancestors all about life, about infinity, immortality, about the universe, about the stars and planets, about life on other worlds across the stars, and how one day, far, far away in the future, an energy device a size of a mountain will be built on Earth for traveling across the stars to other beautiful worlds in the galaxy. The Ai teachings were told and retold for generations, and from the retellings through the centuries, the teachings were changed, modified, and reinterpreted in different ways by many societies across the lands. Over time, the teachings from Ai, God, have become great ancient stories, And those great ancient stories have become beliefs about life, about the universe, about infinity, immortality, about other worlds across the stars, and even about traveling across the stars millennia ago. The ancestors of the ancient Egyptians were the first to start a journey to find the send lens under the morning stars, where Ai, God, known as Atum at the time, has said a gateway to another world across the stars will be built. The ancient Egyptians even knew how the stars in the night sky had to be aligned for traveling across the stars to another world through the prophesized energy device. But they didn't know how to build the energy device, so they were building mastaba buildings before the Great Pyramids as a symbolic, ritualistic try to keep the stories from Ai alive. After ancient writings explaining the energy device were brought from a faraway land to the ancient Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians were eager to build the first Great Pyramid, thinking the same will be the prophesied energy device for traveling across the stars. They believed in the stories and the teachings from Ai deeply because they were alive to see many prophecies from the stories happening in real life. The oracles have warned the pharaohs that the energy device cannot be built in their time, but the ancient Egyptians built the first Great Pyramid anyway, believing they are building the prophesied energy device for traveling across the stars. The purpose of the pyramids as a gateway to another world was symbolized everywhere, with drawings of an ascending circle with wide open wings on the top of the pyramids. And the belief for the gateway to another world was also drawn as a circle above the heads of the ancient Egyptians and the deities coming from fragmented parts of the Ai's stories. Nama says the ancient Egyptians were ahead of their time, thinking they can build an energy device for traveling across the stars to other worlds, but he says the teachings for a gateway traveling across the stars from Ai, God, are 100% correct. I smiled, trying not to offend Nama. I said, "Nama, this is so surreal. Are you saying intergalactic traveling across the stars to other worlds is 100% possible?" Nama smiled and said, "Yes." I asked, "How? How can we physically make an intergalactic gateway traveling? I don't believe in anything surreal. I was only curious to hear what Nama will say." Nama explained the physics behind the ancient prophesied interplanetary energy device. He said, "If you put a small ball in a horizontal glass tube filled with cloth, and if a gentle force forward is applied to the ball will not go anywhere because of the cloth. Imagine the cloth is all the particles, atmospheric and space densities, and all the resistance forces towards the destination endpoint of the tube being in the example another world in the galaxy. The resistance is preventing the ball from going from one side to the other. Now apply compressed air to take out the cloth in the tube. Imagine the compressed air is an active energy neutralizing ray beam. Then apply a gentle force on the ball, and because there is almost no resistance, the ball will now go easily from point A to point B in a second, and you are on the other side of the galaxy." In a theoretical reality, what Nama said is correct. Even in basic theoretical physics, the speed of any energy flow in a non-resistant space is infinite, and theoretically, creating and sustaining a similar space in space might be used for interplanetary traveling across the stars, but life is not a theoretical playing field. Nama said the texture of space is like water. If you can make a small iron ball go a long distance underwater in just a few seconds, you can make a light-speed jump in space. I was thinking while Nama was speaking, how can one make an iron ball go a really long distance underwater in just a few seconds? Even a fired bullet underwater may travel only a few feet. And then I thought, maybe there is a way. Freeze a path in the water, laser a way through, and when force is applied on the ball, one can make the ball go a mile in just a few seconds. Space, in a way, is and does behave like water, maybe a special vacuum-ripping dynamic energy beam, actively sustaining an internal, extremely low-resistance energy environment, can be used for a light-speed jump. Maybe in the future, the human race will be protectors of the galaxy, preventing cataclysmic events from happening on other planets. Nama said an intergalactic space-age future will happen. The legacy of God written by the guardian protectors of Earth is on the $1 bill. He says we can see the prophesied ascending pyramid top and "In God We Trust" written in the bill. I smiled. I am a cute, hardcore realist. I don't believe in anything surreal, but everything Nama said was outstanding. Also personally for me, what popped the top was a friend saying, "You have written the best book in the world." She took a $1 bill, pointed a finger toward the pyramid and said, "Here is the pyramid and the prophesied ascending top. And look here. Here is the pyramid with the energy ray activated. Looks like the ray goes in the space texture, a first try maybe. And then look here. Here is the pyramid again with the ray beam going all the way through toward another world. Look, there are life forms down watching and cheering, all under the words, 'In God we trust,' as were the millennia-old ancient teachings and beliefs. I was left without words, feeling extreme happiness." After reading the book, my friend also joined in No Slaveries on Earth. Everyone has to participate. Everyone has to care. Set a bird free from a cage, a fish in the sea. Post. Spread love. A message of love can have a butterfly effect all over the world. Incorporate a balanced plant-based way of nutrition to aid in ending all slaveries on planet Earth and enjoy the health benefits. Olympic gold medalists are proving psychophysical superiority by making Olympic world records on a plant-based way of nutrition. The popular plant-based way of nutrition is also known as the fountain of youth. A wise suggestion for every human to achieve optimal health is to use the medically suggested daily nutrient recommendations through a plant-based way of nutrition and to avoid processed foods. Life is a hunt, one might say, and everyone eats. But doctors say people on a balanced plant-based way of nutrition are generally healthier, happier, live longer, and look younger. Plant-based proteins have more nutrients and fiber, and a smart combination of plant-based foods gets us all the essential amino acids we need for our bodies. Care for your body, walk more instead of driving, be slim, be beautiful, contribute in stopping the global warming, and join in on ending all slaveries on Earth. Earth is our home. Life is so beautiful. Life is love. Please care. There are over 4 billion religious people on Earth, most of which are using fantasies to justify real-life slaveries. People are often afraid of mortality and find hope in the biblical stories, so the religions go on, but the truth may be even more comforting. By understanding the core of life, everyone will discover we are infinite beings, born for the first time, attracted by the universe. As far as mortality goes, our soul, our being, our life, to turn into nothingness is physically impossible. Even the entire universe starts from the so-called nothingness. We are immortal beings, creators of a future infinity. Nama said the biblical God comes from human-made fantasies and ancient folk stories, from retellings of testimonies that were surfacing around the lands of ancient Egypt. He says the ancient origin of the name God comes from the time when the real Almighty God, a most beautiful, immortal, infinite being, was a friend to the ancient human ancestors and was teaching everyone to be good. Therefore, from good is the name God. Nama says, God has spoken for all the religious people to know. God is good. Making slaveries is bad. Bad is opposite of good. Bad is opposite of God. Nama says everyone can validate the same in their hearts because God lives in the heart of everyone. Good is a non-material state of being on which our civilization is based, the feeling we love to love, just being kind to one another. And life is as life is. Life is beautiful. Life is survival. Everyone eats. In the past, there were cold winters, dry summers. People were dying from hunger, and a meat-eating way of life was established that is sustaining slaveries on Earth today when there is no food survival threat, nor there will be in the future. We can build future cities on Mars if we decide to do so by growing food from seeds. Everything else on Earth is easier. There are no excuses for slaveries to be made on Earth. We have to end all the slaveries on planet Earth.